What's going on, everyone? So Brandon Ingram has really struggled mightily for Team USA. He doesn't really seem to fit. He just is kind of out there on the court at times, even though he's starting, and he just hasn't looked like his usual self. And he recently even expressed his frustrations. And the real question is like, what's up with Brandon Ingram? What's going on with him? So Brandon Ingram said, "This is totally different than what I am used to. The team is winning right now, so I can't be selfish thinking about myself, but it's a little frustrating right now for me, and I'm just trying to figure out ways I can be effective." Steve Kerr even chimed in and said, nothing has really gone his way. He hasn't had a lot of opportunities, but I think that'll change. I think his time is coming. He's just got to stay with it. The thing I've learned with FIBA is every night belongs to someone new. I wouldn't have guessed that Paolo Banchero would be our leading scorer last night, but all 12 guys are so talented that all it takes is a couple shots to get in, and any one of these guys can get it going. I expect that to happen for Brandon Ingram. So, again, Brandon Ingram has really struggled. During the exhibition games, he only averaged 7.8 points per game, which isn't terrible. I mean, right? Again, you're on a roster with a bunch of star-studded players. You're not going to average 20-plus points per game on Team USA, right? You see some of these other stars averaging 20-plus on these other teams around the world, but it's because they're the guy and they're not on this like star-studded roster. So they have to score 30 points for them to basically even have a chance. But you look at Team USA, and, Steve Kerr is spot on, right? Every night it's been somebody else. We've seen Jalen Brunson. We've seen Anthony Edwards, Paolo Banchero. Austin Reeves led the team in points and assists the other night in their game. So it's not like far-fetched to think that Brandon Ingram can't be the guy on any given night. But he has really struggled defensively. He hasn't been as good as you would expect, especially going up against the talent level that some of these teams have. He just kind of seems like he's just out there rather than really being effective and finding ways to impact the game. I do appreciate Brandon Ingram talking about how, hey, like I can't be selfish. We're winning. It's not about me. It's about the team. Because it is, right? The goal is to win a gold medal, right? You're still on that team. You're still making an impact. You're still doing something, right? But he hasn't been, like many people thought that he had the potential to be the best player on Team USA, right? And, when you looked at Team USA's roster when it was first announced, it was like, okay, Brandon Ingram is probably their best player, but like, how is this roster going to fare? Are they going to be really good? And Anthony Edwards has emerged far and away as their best player, right? He's just been great. But Brandon Ingram, you still would imagine that he would be one of the best guys, and he really hasn't been. I mean, even from like an efficiency standpoint, he's really struggled. It's been a mess for him. It's been really tough for him in that regard, and it's unfortunate because he is a star on the Pelicans. He's used to being the guy, and it shows the adjustment and change when you're playing with the Team USA, right? So like I've talked about players, like Austin Reeves will go out and score, 12 points. And, people will be like, he only scored 12 points. Or Anthony Edwards will go out and score, he only scored 15, right? Like, but you got to put things in perspective. These guys aren't getting 20 plus shot attempts like they do on Team US or on their respective teams, right? Team USA, again, everybody's going around. Quarters are shorter. The rules are different. Everything is different about FIBA. We've heard countless USA teams talk about the adjustment and change of going from the NBA to then playing in FIBA. We've heard this team express the frustrations and issues of just playing and adapting to the rules and the changes, right? Like, for example, like things, even like goaltending isn't a thing, right? Like you can literally just go up and grab the ball. Like you can't do certain things and the physicality is different. Like everything is different in FIBA, and it takes an adjustment period for certain players. Brandon Ingram is used to playing a very specific way. He's used to getting the shot attempts. He's used to having the ball in his hands and not having to play off the ball as much. Things like that. He's allowed to just go and isolate and create and do whatever, right? On this team, he can't. He's not in that position. He is playing off the ball more. He is having to be efficient and effective in other ways. And that's really hard to do, right? It's not something that is just as, straightforward, clean cut as it usually is. And again, his efficiency. So Austin Reeves is number one in rating by like far. He's like a 27.6 in rating. And then you have like Paolo Banchero, who's second, Tyrese Halliburton's third. Now, again, this doesn't mean that necessarily they're the best players. They just have been the most efficient, most effective guys. And it makes sense, a guy like Austin Reeves, he's used to playing off the ball. He's used to not being the star. So he's able to adapt and adjust and kind of be that chameleon-like player more than, a guy like Brandon Ingram would be. Because Brandon Ingram is used to being on the ball. He's used to being that star. He's used to being those things, right? So, it makes sense. But Brandon Ingram is like second or third to last on this roster in rating. He's been bad for Team USA. It hasn't been like, he's just struggling. Like, no, he like almost unplayable in stretches and spots, right? And it's like he was the guy, like he was the one guy on this roster when it was like this roster was announced. It was like, it's not like it's definitely the B team, but at least you have like Anthony Edwards and like Brandon Ingram, right? Like those are the two like big standout guys. Like, okay, like these guys, they're the guys that should be head and shoulders above everybody and really help and lead this charge. And Anthony Edwards has held up his end. He's been that guy, but Brandon Ingram really hasn't. And, it's understandable, right? Especially a guy like Anthony Edwards being a guard. He's bringing the ball up. He has the ball in his hands more. He's able to do more, right? Like, it's different. But you look at Ingram and you're just like, with his size and his versatility and the way he can handle the ball and get people off the dribble, like, it's just, you would think this guy would just be setting the world on fire, right? Like, that this guy would just be ridiculous. I mean, we've seen Kevin Durant, and look, Brandon Ingram's not Kevin Durant, although he gets compared a lot to him. He's not. But we've seen Brandon Ingram, or Kevin Durant, be just completely, utterly, ridiculously unstoppable and dominant for Team USA. And it's like, you would expect Brandon Ingram to maybe not be to that level, but at least a version of that. Right? And he hasn't. And I don't know, again, with sports and conversation like this, the narrative changes very quickly, right? Team USA plays their next game on Wednesday, and what if Brandon Ingram ends up going off for 20, right? He just shoots the lights out. Because Steve Kerr is right? Like, every night it's a different guy. Every night, these guys are so talented that when they get it going on any night, anybody can get it going. Any guy could beat you. Like, that is what makes this roster so valuable, right? Like, that's what makes this roster so great. And Brandon Ingram is one of those guys that is very capable of, taking 8 attempts and going 7 of 8, right? And getting you, 20 plus points or something crazy like that, right? Like, he can do that. It's just, will he? And is his confidence starting to get swayed to a point where it really starts being a detriment to him, right? And does it impact his play for the Pelicans? Now, some of you might be thinking that, like, well, why would it do that? He's going to go right back to his usual role and whatnot. But, like, one, if Zion's healthy, we've seen Brandon Ingram's role kind of, not be as massive because you got a guy in Zion who is so efficient, so effective and whatnot. But, like, if his confidence gets swayed, Brandon Ingram isn't known as this, like, absolute killer, like, confident, like an Anthony Edwards type guy. Where Anthony Edwards, like, if Anthony Edwards was struggling, I wouldn't be worried about him. Like, his confidence and his belief is through the roof. Brandon Ingram, even, like, Duke level, like, there was a lot of questions about just his confidence and, how he's looked at and perceived as this killer. And, we've seen what the impact from Team USA can do for players and just elevating their game when they go to the respective teams. But a guy like Brandon Ingram, who was expected and looked at to be one of the leaders, one of the stars, one of the captains, one of the guys that really just dominated for Team USA, to be one of the worst on Team USA, that can have an impact. Again, that could definitely have an impact, right? And he's with the Pelicans, and there's already been questions and issues about him with the Pelicans. The Pelicans have had him in trade rumors and trade talks, and, there's been talks about, Zion gets all this attention, and he hardly plays, and Brandon Ingram, he's kind of the other guy, right? Like, you start painting this narrative, you could see the change, but I don't know. I'm rooting for him. I want him to win. I want him to have success. I want him to really kind of be that guy. I was a huge fan of him out of Duke. Obviously, if you're familiar with me and my content, I'm a Laker fan. I was stoked when he was drafted by the Lakers. So to see that, and then, him go to the Pelicans and kind of be in a position, like I actually was pumped that he went to the Pelicans, because I was like, okay, we're really going to get to see what this guy can become and what he could be. Where I think on the Lakers, he never would have really had that chance, right? With, like, let's say they kept him over Kuz. With him being the third option, I don't think he would be the Brandon Ingram that we know now. Maybe, you never know. But I think with like LeBron James and Anthony Davis, he would have taken a real back seat. Where on the Pelicans, he was able to kind of emerge and become that, 25-5-5 guy, right? Like, that's great to see. And so I want to see him have success. I want to see him be successful, but it's a tough spot he's in right now. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you make of Brandon Ingram and his struggles? Do you think it's concerning? Do you think it's not? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments.